This interview is part of the James J. Blanchard Living Library of Michigan Political History. Our interview today is with Bob Traxler, who has led one of the most interesting and eclectic political careers of anybody in public life in recent Michigan history. A former assistant prosecutor, a former state representative, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, an 18-year congressman, and finally, the pièce de résistance, a Mackinac Island State Park Commissioner. Welcome to Michigan Political History Society.
Thank you very much, Bill, and I want to express my gratitude to the Michigan Political History Society, Dave Murley, yourself, and all the supporters of this worthwhile cause. I'm very honored and very grateful to be here this morning.
Bob Traxler, it's 1931, Cullman, Michigan, a rural Bay County community. What was life like in the 1930s and 1940s as you were growing up?
It was a small village on the Cullman River. My father was a rural mailman and a small farmer. Our farm was right on the edge of the village. And I was probably about 9 years old when my dad sold it. But it gave me an insight into the farm community of Michigan and the crops and the people who were involved in agriculture. Really, the life that I had was that of kind of a Huckleberry Finn. We built rafts for the river, we swam in the river, we skated there and played hockey in the winter. It was an idyllic existence. Bay City was 5 miles away. Every Saturday, my father would load me and friends into his vehicle and take us to Bay City, the big city, for a movie. And the movie cost 10 cents. And I went to a 2-room country school until the grade of 7, when the district, this little rural district, merged with, or made a contract with the Bay City system, whereby 7th grade, 8th grade students would be bused into Bay City. And so I attended high school, 7th, 8th grade at T.L. Handy High School, right, and then graduated in the first graduating class from T.L. Handy High School, which is now a middle school, a new high school having been built.
And then you went to Bay City Junior College, it was called in those days, for what, 2 years?
2 years, and transferred to Michigan State, from which I graduated in '53.
And then Army duty?
And then the Army.
The
2 years
draft,
in the military.
we still had a draft, right?
We still had a draft.
And then after that you got out and you decided to go to law school?
I came back to Michigan State and spent a year. I had decided to become a school teacher. And for one of any vocation, I was a graduate of political science and history minor. While I was working towards that teaching certificate, my natural inclination towards politics ran over me, and I filled out an application for law school to Wayne State and Detroit College of Law, and was accepted at both, decided to go to DCL, and did so, to graduate 3 years later, and returned to Bay City. There was an opening in the prosecutor's office as an assistant, and enjoyed very much 2 years as an assistant prosecutor before being elected to the state legislature.
Okay, you ran for the State House of Representatives. This is the first time you'd sought political office in 1962, and that was a year that George Romney was challenging the incumbent governor, John Swainson, for the governorship, and the House and Senate were controlled by the Republicans narrowly at that time. What was that first campaign like that you ran against a Republican? I think his name was Mike Gilman.
Yes.
How much did you spend? Did you have debates? What was a campaign like then compared to what you see today?
Very different. We were all amateurs. The total campaign costs were $2,000.
Wow.
And Mike and I were acquaintances. We became friends during the campaign. He worked at the Bay City Times, and they asked him to at least take a leave of absence and even consider whether he should resign.
Did he continue to write stories on your campaign while he was at the Bay City Times?
They didn't
I don't
permit
think
that.
so.
He actually, they asked him to leave for the campaign, and he was not affiliated with the newspaper in any way. And after the campaign, I don't recall if he went back to the paper or whether he came on to Lansing as part of the George Romney administration. He became a Romney appointee, I believe it was to the Workmen's Comp Commission, even though he wasn't an attorney.
Right.
And he did go to law school while he was in Lansing, and had a very successful career specializing in workmen's comp.
It's 1962. George Romney is challenging incumbent Governor John Swainson. You are running for the State House of Representatives, first political office you've ever sought. What were the differences in campaigning in that year compared to what you see today? What did you go through?
Well, those are all very interesting questions. I think it was totally different from today's atmosphere. And I developed friends on both sides of the aisle, even though I was, in my caucus, rather aggressive, impatient, and keenly involved with policy issues. And I sort of stirred up the cozy relationship that existed between Republican and Democrats. The Democrats had accepted a perpetual minority status, and I believe that the philosophical differences between the parties deserved to be thoroughly aired and considered. And I kept making that point with my friends in the Democrat Party, and some of them agreed. Many of them were very comfortable with their committee assignments, with the people they'd worked with for a number of years on the other side of the aisle. And so I was twixt and tween. I had many Republican friends, and the speaker at that time was a man by the name of Allison Green from I think Sanilac County.
Sanilac County, right.
Mm-hmm. And Allison Green was a farmer and a part-time banker. And because of my background and interest in agriculture, we got along very well. And I had many Republican friends. And the interesting thing was that at that time, Baker versus Carr was decided. And so reapportionment.
One man, one vote.
One man, one vote. Changed the world politically.
Everything. Right.
Permanently. And lo and behold, as a consequence of that, plus national political scene,
LBJ killed Barry Goldwater, figuratively speaking, in the general election. That plus one man, one vote, all of a sudden you got what you wanted, a Democratic majority for the first time since 1938. The Democrats had majorities in both the House and Senate, overwhelming majorities. You still had the Republican governor because George Romney was reelected. So that changed everything, and you were named by your caucus and by the chamber as the number 2 Democrat, weren't you? You were the floor leader.
Yes, I was majority floor leader. A tremendous challenge and fraught with some difficulties and also great opportunities. And the first, I viewed these opportunities as a chance to modernize the state legislature, to bring professional types into the legislature as staff people, and to insist that the legislative process be one that would be open, would be fair, and that would be accessible to ordinary citizens, as well as provide both parties in the legislature with all of the information necessary to make the right decisions on behalf of the public good. And we embarked upon that. Joe Kowalski was the speaker. He had an assistant whose name was Dick Miller. Dick later went on to Central Michigan University in a capacity there, and I don't recall what it was. It was not president, but he served many years there. But Dick was a individual who had a wide range of interest in the legislative area.